What does it take for a peasant girl to challenge kings, lead armies, and face death by fire? In Rouen, 1431, Jeanne d'Arc stands chained to a post, flames rising at her feet, her eyes fixed on the heavens. Will her life end here, or is this the moment her legend truly begins? Chapter 1: The Burning of Rouen. Rouen, May 30th, 1431. The sun struggles to pierce a sky heavy with smoke and ash, casting a dim, oppressive light over the marketplace. Merchants have abandoned their stalls, children cling to their mothers, and the air carries the acrid scent of straw and wood. The crowd's murmurs swell into a tense hum, punctuated by the distant tolling of bells from the cathedral tower. At the center stands a young woman, barely 19, bound in chains to a rough-hewn wooden post. Her robe is plain and white, the color of innocence, yet the aura around her is anything but ordinary. She lifts her gaze to the heavens, speaking prayers silently, her lips moving with calm determination. The executioner, a silent figure in dark garb, heaves bundles of straw at her feet. The crowd leans in, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the figure known as Jeanne d'Arc. Some whisper her name in fear, others in awe. Her eyes, bright and unwavering, seem to pierce the veil between life and death. She knows her body will soon be consumed by flames. Yet even as the pyre grows taller, there is a light in her that cannot be extinguished. Her courage radiates outward, touching those who watch. Hardened soldiers weep, villagers tremble, and even the skeptics feel an inexplicable stirring in their hearts. This moment, brutal and final, is the beginning of a story that will outlive kings and kingdoms. The fire is lit. The crackling sound rises, mingling with the wind, the screams of distant city streets, and the collective breath of those who witness this act. Joan raises a cross offered by a sympathetic soldier, praying not only for herself, but for her enemies, for the land she loves, and for the king she has served. Flames lick her feet, rise higher, and the smoke curls into the gray sky. She calls upon the name of Jesus repeatedly, her voice unwavering. The crowd watches in awe, some sobbing, some silently kneeling in respect. As her body succumbs, her spirit seems to soar. Her ashes are cast into the Seine, a river meant to erase her, but history has other plans. She is gone in form, but eternal in legacy. The marketplace, once a stage of impending tragedy, becomes a place where legend is born. Jeanne d'Arc, the Maid of Orléans, will remain a symbol of unbreakable conviction, a reminder that courage can defy not only armies, but the very hand of fate itself. Even in death, she commands the imagination of generations to come, a young girl whose flame could never be fully extinguished. Chapter 2: A Girl from Domremy. Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in the windswept village of Domremy, a small hamlet surrounded by dense forests and fertile fields in northeastern France. The village was humble and life was simple. Her parents, Jacques d'Arc and Isabelle Romay, were peasants, devoted to the land and to God. They prayed for survival in a world fractured by the 100 Years' War, where the English and French forces battled for control, and internal conflict between Burgundians and Armagnacs threatened the safety of even the most isolated villages. From an early age, Joan displayed an uncommon strength of character. She tended to household chores and farm duties alongside her family, yet she exhibited a spiritual depth beyond her years. By the age of 13, she claimed to hear voices, divine messages from Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. These voices guided her, instilling in her a sense of purpose that surpassed the boundaries of a peasant's life. They told her she had been chosen to save France, to expel the English invaders, and to ensure that Charles VII would be crowned king. Joan's experiences were marked by a blend of mysticism and practicality. She spoke of her visions with an unshakable conviction that unnerved those around her. She often withdrew into the woods near Domremy, praying and contemplating, developing a resilience that would later define her military campaigns. Her reputation in the village began to grow. People noticed her composure, her courage, and her unwavering belief in her destiny. Yet her family was cautious. Jacques and Isabelle understood the dangers of such claims in a time when superstition, politics, and religion intersected dangerously. They feared for Joan's safety and worried that others might view her as strange, heretical, or even a threat. Despite this, Joan's faith never wavered. She began preparing herself in quiet ways, learning to ride, practicing with rudimentary weapons, and developing a deep understanding of the human spirit that would later inspire soldiers on the battlefield. Her story in Domremy was not of grand battles or crowns, but of preparation and inner fortitude. She was a girl who listened to voices others could not hear, who believed in a mission that seemed impossible, and who cultivated courage in the quiet rhythms of village life. By the time she left Domremy, she was no longer a child, but a force of destiny, a figure whose name would be etched into history. In a world dominated by war, fear, and political intrigue, Joan of Arc's early years reveal the origin of a heroine who would change the course of a nation. Chapter 3. The Road to Chinon. By 1428, France was on the brink of collapse. The English, allied with the Burgundians, had seized large swaths of territory, leaving only a few strongholds intact. Orléans, a critical city on the Loire, was under siege. The future of the French kingdom hung by a fragile thread. Into this chaos stepped Joan, a teenage peasant girl, guided not by worldly ambition but by voices she claimed were divine. Determined to fulfill her calling, Joan sought out Robert de Baudricourt, the garrison commander at Vaucouleurs. Her request was audacious. She asked for troops and support to travel to the court of Charles VII, to aid the king in reclaiming his realm. Baudricourt laughed. A young girl leading armies? Impossible. Yet Joan's determination and sincerity were unyielding. She spoke with a clarity and fervor that unsettled even the hardened commander. I must be at the king's side. There will be no help if not from me. Yet I would rather stay and spin wool beside my mother, for this is not my calling. It is God's. Eventually, Baudricourt relented, providing her with a small escort for safety. Joan prepared for the perilous journey ahead. Dressed in men's clothing to avoid harassment or capture, she rode nearly 300 miles across hostile territory. Villages were abandoned, forests dense and dark, and enemy patrols dangerous at every turn. Yet she pressed forward, fearless and resolute. Along the way, Joan demonstrated remarkable leadership, comforting terrified villagers, diffusing local disputes, and inspiring her modest escort to trust her judgment. The journey to Chinon was more than a physical trek. It was a spiritual trial. Joan prayed constantly, seeking guidance from the saints she had heard since childhood. She fasted, reflected, and prepared herself mentally for the confrontation with the Dauphin. Her faith was her shield, her courage, her compass. Each mile brought her closer to the king. Each challenge reinforced her resolve. Finally, after weeks of arduous travel, Joan arrived at the Loire court. The sight of the fortified castle at Chinon, the bustling courtiers, and the skeptical eyes of Charles's advisors could have intimidated any seasoned warrior. But Joan approached with calm confidence. She had traveled through war-torn lands, faced danger, and answered to a higher calling. When she would meet Charles, she would do so with certainty, not fear. The journey itself became a testament to her character. Joan was no ordinary girl. She was resilient, courageous, and unwavering in faith. Every obstacle, bandits, harsh terrain, distrustful locals, was met with a clarity of purpose rare in someone so young. By the time she reached Chinon, Joan had transformed from a simple peasant into a figure whose destiny was intertwined with the fate of France itself. Her arrival would challenge not only the king's skepticism, but the very course of the nation's history. Chapter 4. The King's Test. Charles VII, cautious and skeptical, tested Joan by hiding among courtiers. She recognized him immediately, kneeling and proclaiming her divine mission. She foretold victories, including Orléans' liberation. Royal theologians examined her, debating her virtue, faith, and sanity. Finally, they concluded she was no threat, and perhaps even a true instrument of God. Chapter 5. The Siege of Orléans. April 1429. Joan entered Orléans clad in white armor, carrying a banner inscribed Jesus Maria. She refused to wield a sword for killing, inspiring soldiers instead. Over a week, she led assaults on English positions, enduring danger with courage. At the Battle of the Tourelles, She was struck by an arrow but returned to lead her troops. By May 8th, the English lifted the siege, an improbable victory under the guidance of a teenage girl.
Please subscribe and look for more documentaries at Swords and Shadows.